Hello, this is Christian Idealism. Today we're going to be discussing two things. One is meta-ethics, and two is the marriage model, which I've actually been quite interested in. That it's probably like one of the big things that really sparked my interest out of all this. But so let's begin with the meta-ethics. So first of all, just so for our audience knows, meta-ethics is basically, you know how with metaphysics you have different the nature of reality, where well, meta ethics is what is morality. Like, is morality objective or is it not objective? Is it, is it just made up, or is it, are there objective moral values that
Right.
good and bad? So yeah. So we're going under idealism, of course. Meta ethics is kind of different in the fact that it doesn't have to assume any, like let's just say it doesn't have to defend any really position, and it doesn't really have to defend any position, because at the top level, it's automatically more realism, correct, Johannan?
What?
At the top level, it's more realism, right?
Yeah.
So
Well,
no matter if you're a moral relativist or a moral nihilist or whatever, at the top level, it's just gonna always be moral realism, right?
yeah. Well, the way you could derive that is important though too, because once you derive it, it is not just like There's lots of models that say that morality is objective, but the manner and idealism and how you derive it becomes relevant to other things along the way.
Okay.
So it's a larger
Yeah.
framework.
Well, I know, but with the whole okay, so let's say if you were to hold to moral relativism, where everyone's morality is it's only true for them, not true for others. Well, even if that were the case, at the top level, there would be one mind that would basically hold in all of that more relativistic framework, and then at the top
Right.
level, it's going to be one mind that ultimately decides basically what's good and bad, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So then that would hold true for not just that viewpoint, but also like if you were to hold to like some power nihilism, or pretty
Yeah.
much almost any
Because
pretty much any viewpoint.
if everyone was power nihilists, even right.
Yeah.
The irony is that at the top, you'd have power nihilists combining and they'd form a single, conscious state there, or conscious agent. And that conscious, the next conscious agent up would also have um, moral. It would have its own, combined will to power, right?
Yeah.
So you have two conscious agents that combine; they have their own third will to power. You go on up and so forth, and you have multiple conscious agents creating this combined will to power.
And then that will to power would be the objective. Like it would be only it
Yeah,
would be
but the
like
catch with this is though, when you keep combining all the way up, it just the combination. Then you combine these conscious agents, and all their value sets are combined into a single unified will to power. And strangely enough, this will to power, despite people appearing on a lower level to have contradictory value sets, because of this combination term, they would necessarily have to be reconciled somehow at the next level up. And so the top level, all value sets to be reconciled into a single coherent value set that would be compatible with all value sets. And it would be,
that seems extremely paradoxical. Like
paradoxical at first, but
it makes sense
it makes sense. And then you can understand why when you go with that framework, you can then use that framework backwards to understand how that paradox arises and how it can be resolved.
Okay, so like you don't have like the thing with this though. What I found very interesting is that typically when people argue for meta ethics or whatever position they hold to, they have to defend this one position and then attack all the others. But it seems like this kind of you can hold to any position you want essentially, and any of them would literally at the top level would literally be more realism, objective moral values. Like that seems crazy, but I mean that's just is that I don't see any other conclusion other than that. I mean that just
Again.
no. What I'm saying is that it doesn't. It seems like it
Oh
doesn't
yeah, no
matter.
matter what you do, no matter what value set you pick.
No matter what moral whatever you think morality is.
This idealistic metaphysics, it always ends up terminating on an objective value set, which is crazy. And it's an objective value set that everyone, if they were omniscient, right? I mean, because not everyone is omniscient, so they don't know. But if they were omniscient, everyone would end up agreeing with it.
That's crazy. I mean, that kind of just ends the whole debate, literally.
Yeah, just necessarily as a result of it's metaphysically built in that they would end up doing that. They would end up agreeing it based on their own value set.
Right. So then, I mean, because of that, I'm kind of agnostic on which, moral values, which ethical system is correct, because it seems like it doesn't matter which one I choose. It seems like it's always gonna just end up with moral realism at the top level. I mean, it's just, it seems crazy, but that's kind of,
yet it's true somehow, which is the bizarre thing.
Yeah, it's kind of like they can all be true in some sense, and even if they were all true,
they're not all true. That's the thing, is that the values are all true. Okay.
Yeah.
The moral systems that come from those can be misguided.
Okay.
Like they may be based on some distortions that people aren't realizing.
So the distortions would, be the evil, right?
Yeah. So basically, here's how it goes. You have, all our minds are contained into a larger mind. You can call that either God, or you can call it a universal conscious agent, or larger consciousness system. That's what Tom Campbell calls it.
Yeah.
And you then end up with a situation with, because there are all these different, elements like that. They're all contained in the same, or rather they all. That system contains all the value sets, right?
Mm-hmm.
From the top level, it's it's the one mind having all those value sets, and that one mind isn't necessarily consistent with itself, and so therefore it has a reference frame that is universally intersubjective to all the frames down below it, within it.
I mean, Tim, what do you think?
And that won't necessarily be objective in an It's not objective in an ontic sense, but then idealism, nothing is objective in an ontic sense. That's not really a big deal. But it is objective in an epistemic sense, in the sense that, you're able to deduce the right, everyone has the same conclusion that you come to no matter what. Which is kind of what people think of when they think of objective ethics. It's right no matter who you are, or what your subjective value frame is.
Tim, you there?
Yeah, I think I'm on board. I might have a few questions, but just keep on going right now, I think.
So then, say you have, that value set is good, right?
Yeah.
It's effectively good in all frames, and the larger consciousness system, or the universal conscious agent, or God, generates things based on that value set, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so because of that, because he's generating things based on that value set, those things are necessarily good as well, because they're produced by good values, right?
Yep.
They're designed by good values. Everything about them is good. So therefore, the conclusion, oddly, is that everything in creation is good. Everything in the universe, everything is period good. But then, of course, there's this question: is how do you get evil out of there, right?
Yeah, and that's.
So the only way out is evil can't be a thing in itself. It has to be an absence of a thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
Well, I think that's pretty easy to prove, just deductively, but yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, if everything that exists is good, then evil has to be something that does not exist. But then, of course, evil really does exist. But I have to ask the question of what does that mean?
Yeah, it's like
the absence of good.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, you can't create a creation out of Swiss cheese, because that's creating a bad system, right?
Mm-hmm.
A good designer would not create a Swiss cheese model, right? So how does that happen? Well, it happens with the system breaking. Basically, things are relatively deprived of what they need to make them good, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's something missing from them, right?
Yeah.
And because there's something missing from them, the pieces can't just go disappearing because it's no Swiss cheese. But because of that, you have to have the situation where the pieces have to be locally missing. So the pieces are out there somewhere; they're just not connected to the piece that they should be connected to, right?
Yeah.
So because of that, the pieces are simply broken or fractured, essentially, and that would be what you would think of as the evil state, or a bad thing would
The
be
fallen
something
state,
that
yeah.
the
Yeah.
fallen state is a state with the pieces
And
are all
then
shattered.
and then of course I think we talked about this before, but the only way to fix that fallen state is of course
Right.
God.
Yeah, because of the whole, you can't get out of ego by yourself for the same reason of that Donald Trump meme,
Yeah.
which the people who didn't see that episode, it was the meme with him in the Buddhist, monk
Yeah.
robes and saying, I can transcend I'm able to transcend my ego better than anyone else. I'm like, no one can transcend their ego better than me.
Yeah, it's nonsense. Tim, what was your question? Tim. You there, Tim? Alright, whatever. Anyways, so I've kind of, because of this, I mean, for the past, I mean, I'm not really big on ethics. I'm more of a metaphysics guy, obviously, but um, I've kind of now, I mean, I'm kind of agnostic on which, let's just say which moral value set or whatever should be true. Like, if you, should I be a more relativist, a nihilist? I'm kind of agnostic at this point, but I don't think it really matters.
If idealism is true, because it all gets reconciled up top somehow,
Yeah, so
and it then terminates on an objective moral system, believe it or not, which is the curious thing.
yeah.
Oh, I remember
It's all
now. I
possible
remember.
value sets, and it reorders them into an objectively moral, objective value, system of
Yeah.
objective value.
Tim, what was your question?
Yeah, Johanna, what do you think of moral Platonism?
Well, that's interesting because I've noticed something very interesting about moral Platonism. When we have this notion in our heads, well, where would these value sets be in the first place? They're in our heads, right?
Uh-huh.
And that would include a value set of like I mentioned the whole shared inner space thing in their episode, where the space comes from the quantum cognition combined with the idealist physics, emergent space time. So our minds are actually extended in inner space. All the ideas are real, so they're Platonic essentially. And so, likewise, if that's the case, God's mind is down there, at a subconscious level to us, though. We're not God, so it's subconscious to us. It would be a value set existing in God's mind, right? Which would also be a Platonic idea.
Exactly.
Now,
right.
the cool thing about this is Platonic forms. The whole notion of a Platonic form is that it's the one perfect form that sets the standard for everything else, right?
Right, and that's why I feel like with idealism that makes sense.
Yeah, everything else is an instantiation of it, right?
Yeah.
And so now what's interesting about that is the whole notion of universal intersubjectivity fits that, doesn't it?
Uh-huh. Oh!
Yeah, because everything is, automatically necessarily an instance of the form, right? And there's perfect form good. Every form of, and that's we seeing it from the other way around rather than building it up, with this, bottom-up approach. This way you can see it from the top, same thing from the top-down perspective, where it's everything is necessarily.
So it's like, you can get there from the bottom up, but like the top-down helps you meet in the middle of like, it sort of clears everything up.
Yep.
I mean, because I know a lot of philosophers are, meta ethics, and they kind of argue for whatever viewpoint they hold to. I mean, it's crazy that it's crazy how you could literally fit all of meta ethics into this, like any viewpoint can really work with this idealism. Like, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
Yep.
So, okay, so now you got anything more you want to add to that meta ethics, or do you want to move on?
Well, so the Platonic thing about it is that
Oh,
it's
yeah.
it's if it's universally intersubjective, everything else is represented by it. Everyone's values are, but you look see it the other way around, you see why that is, and you see it's actually because everyone else's values is a representation of this one form.
Mm-hmm.
It's but they may not realize it, or they may have it distorted, or etc. But it's all
Okay. So now, how? Now the word. I mean, again, I found it very interesting that you could literally derive marriage, right? Because that's gonna have.
Yeah, that's the next step.
That's gonna have that's gonna have huge.
Massive.
Not
We
just
already saw. We already saw. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
It's not. I mean, not just philosophical implications, but literally, this is going to flip society on its head, essentially, because now we live in a time where homosexuality has been pretty much accepted, at least for most first world countries, and so I mean, this is gonna cause a lot of problems for a lot of people.
Fun to do that.
This is gonna be the worst. Like out of the whole idealism thing, this is gonna be the one that just.
That's what I want to do. I want to punish the entire the whole social liberalism movement.
I mean, I mean, idealism is already bad enough, but the fact that you could literally
Do this.
Yeah, this is gonna. Oh my god,
They deserve it.
This is
deserve it so bad. I know they do.
okay. Anyway, so how do you get the marriage model? Like I've seen some. I saw your video.
Okay, well, we already see the basis for it at a very primitive level here. Okay, remember I said when you combine different value sets and they form a single value set, right?
Yeah.
I see you have the two, and then the two value sets become one value set, and then it merges all the way up, and that's the single good.
Yeah.
Does that look like anything to you?
Just a mind.
No, no. Two value sets, two conscious agents merging and becoming one value set. One conscious agent.
Marriage.
Marriage. Of course, it doesn't mean it's the same thing, but there's this little kind of parallel structure built in, right? Which is just a little curious at first, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we look at that very carefully. We find some other interesting things out of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
1 second here. 1 second. Oh, hold on here. Hold on to it. Sorry. Tell me on the screen. Anyway, so to understand that, so I mentioned how the fallen state is these fractured pieces, right? The pieces can't go just missing, right?
Yep.
Because if they can't disappear because it just doesn't disappear. It has to be a relative privation. So like a puzzle piece, it doesn't fit into it's missing from some other puzzle piece, etc. Right?
Yeah.
So
it's gonna fit, right?
Yeah. So that's the whole fallen state. Is it's essentially these fractured puzzle pieces, and that's the source of evil. Is it's a fracturing because it can't be. It's privation of bony, but it can't be a privation of substance because stuff can't just go missing. So it has to be a privation of ordering.
Yeah.
Or distorted, not in the right places, and so on. The values are there. All the right values are there. They're just in the wrong jigsaw puzzle arrangement. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So now the interesting about these puzzle pieces, it's fractured consciousness in the Hilbert space, or talked about the shared inner space the other time, and that's what's simulating, the physical world, right? The quantum idealism.
Yeah.
And the thing about that is let me demonstrate how this pattern emerges at first, and you'll see where I'm getting at this. Okay. Suppose you're God or the larger consciousness system or whatever have you. Okay. And you want to create something, right? You guys there?
Yeah.
Okay, now when you create something, say a painting or a book or a YouTube video, you do it because you love it in some respect. Maybe not love it literally, but you like it, you value it, right?
You value that, yeah.
Yeah.
In a very rudimentary sense, it's a love in a very rudimentary sense, right?
Yeah.
It's in the sense that it's valued, okay? So because it's valued, because the love thing is valued, or the thing that's the love is valued, you then create it, right?
Yeah.
But now say you're God's mind, and well, where does the stuff come from to make the stuff with, right?
Well, I mean, if you're the only mind that exists, it would
It
have
has to
come
be
from-
internally created, right?
Yeah.
The ideas, right? And ideas in your mind, which is kind of fits the whole notion of creating out of information or words you see in the
Yeah.
Bible, right, and in other traditions as well. So you then create the stamp out, okay, that you then love, okay, and that thing that is stamped out in turn is loved, okay. But now additionally, it's also complementary to you, okay. You see, if you have a cookie stamped out of dough, the cookie is going to be complementary to the dough it's stamped out of, correct?
Yeah, it fits. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so now with that, you have 1 second here. The cookie stamped out of the dough, and it's complementary. And 1 second. Interestingly, you see the same pattern showing up in multiple religions across the board. Okay,
Yeah. Well, I mean,
and it relates to gender. The lover is okay. Keep this in mind. The lover is the male. The loved is the female. Okay, just like keep
yeah.
that pattern in mind. I'm going to show you something very interesting with this. This pattern shows up over and over again in comparative religion, as well as the notion of stuff being stamped out of other stuff and thereby forming the basis for gender complementarity. Okay.
Yeah.
You see it with, well, firstly, Eve is cut out of Adam. Eve is Adam's rib, correct?
Yeah. Metaphorically. Yeah.
Okay. And then you see in Colossians 1:17, it says, in him is, he's before all things, and in him all things hold together, and he is also the head of the church, okay? So we see here everything is inside God, which includes the church. And of course, it describes he's also the head of the church, which is, they compare the church to the male-female relationship with Christ and the bride, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's the female inside of male, right? Which is the same thing you see with the Adam and Eve pattern, right? Eve's cut out of Adam, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, you see the same pattern again in completely different philosophy. This is Neoplatonic influence. It's Hermetic philosophy, where they call this thing called mental gender, right? Where there is the I, which is the mind,
Yeah.
and there's the contents of the mind, which is, the personality, and that's seen as being female, okay?
Yeah.
And of course, everything is mental in that model. It's an idealistic philosophy. And likewise, if that's the case, then mental gender would be the basis for actual gender, right? If it's
Yeah.
which is kind of funny because then it breaks down the whole sex gender,
Oh yeah.
distinction.
I know.
Yeah.
Because what the whole transgender thing is based on is the sex gender distinction. But if it's idealism, there's no two.
There's no. Yeah.
One is mental, and the other one is also mental. It's just that we don't see it because we're not seeing reality the right way, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's that pattern. Then the same pattern shows up multiple times in multiple religions. I forget where I saw this quote, and it's not on screen right now, but I remember it specifically. It was a Sufi quote. This is Sufi Islam. We talked about, Christianity and Judaism, but now let's look at Sufi Islam. And they talk about how there are, like up in heaven, there are these two parts, right? That were like together, and then they're split apart, and then like into two halves essentially. And then the whole point is to try and find the other half down here, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Unite, whether on earth or in heaven or something like that, it said. And I forget the exact quote, but there was something to that effect.
Mm-hmm.
To search the other half. And you see it in Hinduism, where they have Shiva, who is male, and Shakti, who is female, okay? And they start out as a single unit of cosmic consciousness, okay?
Yeah. They broke off.
They break off, okay?
Yeah.
And then so now they're male and female, but then when they come back together, they unite, and now they're no longer two beings, but one being, and they're united in this state of cosmic consciousness with God and so on, right?
Yep. You there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Okay,
Go
so that's the same pattern again. It's the two, cookie cutter stamp outs, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of an interesting pattern. We see it in those are like exit religions, right? I think Buddhism has something similar. I haven't researched that enough yet. I've told some people have told me, but I have to dig the details out. They call it like sacred sex or something to that effect.
Okay.
But yeah, it's basically that. And then you see the same thing though in ancient religion patterns. In ancient Egyptian religion, for example, they had Isis and Osiris, right? And basically, there they were treated as brother and sister, right? And now you think, oh, that's meaning like incest or something, right? Well, that's not what it was getting at. It was these were symbols, and because they had a very kind of rich cosmogony of how the gods appeared and all that. And their concept of this was that it was when they called them, gods and goddesses, right? What they're really referring to is they have a joint ontological origin.
Okay.
The brother and sister have like a joint ontological origin, so they come from the same source as a single unit. They get split up, right?
Yeah. Well, what causes a split up?
Well, it's just because it's fallen state, or it's just because they're individuating. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So you could have the unfallen state and just have the pieces all together, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they split up, and you see this pattern. By the way, does my voice sound a little bit hoarse?
It's fine.
Okay, I've been a little bit under the weather, so it's also why I've been a bit distracted here. But yeah. So the two of them split up. Okay.
Yeah.
And they have, as a result of this being split up.
Wait, did you switch back to, or are you still talking about Osiris and
Isis? Yes.
Isis? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So they split up, and then when they come back together, they merge and they form a single unit. Okay. In marriage, right? And they were actually seen as like, it was interesting because the Egyptians actually they referred to Isis as the model wife and mother. Like she was a goddess of a number of other things. One of them included marriage, though. Which is because it was interesting because this was an example of that. I mean, this is where they learned about marriage. Basically, is we describe marriage in terms of like Adam and Eve and so on, and Christ and the Church, ancient Egyptian religion described it in terms of Isis and Osiris being split up, and then that was their metaphor essentially. And you see the same thing again in ancient Sumerian mythology, where they call it they have this creation myth of Anki. Okay. Anki was there. That was primordial stuff, right? It splits apart into An, which means heaven, and Ki, which means earth. Okay, like their chief god is Anu, which is heavenly father, basically the version of heavenly father, and they have Ki, which like the lord of the earth was called Enki. Okay, and means lord, and Ki is earth. So you had it split up into two halves, An and Ki. An was heaven, Ki was earth. And the interesting thing, though, is that An was male, while Ki was female. Before they were like a sexless unit, right?
Yeah.
So Ki was the Earth, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's that. I think they had a similar model. I don't know about this in too much detail, but I think I heard that, like, of course, these are like, bad gods, as according to the Bible, but you see the pattern there anyway is like El and Asherah or something like that. Were a similar such pattern.
Yeah. So basically, you see the same thing over and over.
Over and over again, and this is just like the surface. I mean, we covered like 4 extant religions, 2 extinct religions, Hermetics, which is an esoteric system.
Right, and all completely independent of each other.
Yeah, well, not necessarily completely, but yeah, it's the same. Yeah, it keeps showing up.
The same idea is.
Yeah, it seems independent. Like it's I mean, how is Shakti and Shiva going to in any way influence that Sufi quote about the origin of gender? So you see this pattern showing up over and over again within comparative religion and so on. And hold on here. Oh, never mind. Anyway, so you see the pattern showing up over and over again in comparative religion. And now it makes sense when you decide that the metaphysics, right?
Yeah.
One is the lover, the other one is the loved. And when you look at the pattern in nature, you see the exact same thing. The lover is seen as, or the initiator is seen as the male, the receptive is seen as the female, right?
Yeah. And
Well, let's look at a couple instances in reality. Okay, they did a study sometime back about how about dating. Okay,
yeah.
and different psychological expectations of men and women in regards to dating, and it was about what percentage of each gender wanted to either be asked out on a date or to ask out on a date. Okay,
Wasn't it like 90% male wanted to ask? Or go
yeah,
on?
maybe 86 to 90%. Yeah, wanted to ask the female out, and then likewise.
The female
But similar
wanted, yeah.
statistics, like 80-some percent, 80+% wanted to be asked out.
Crazy.
So the male initiates, and then the female receives. It's when they both love, but it's about which one initiates, right?
Yeah.
Which one starts the loving and so on.
Yeah.
Right. And then you see that now. What's fascinating about this is the same pattern repeats again elsewhere, right? You know, say when the issue of reproduction happens, shall we say, right?
Yeah.
Euphemistically, the power plug goes in the power socket, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of them is initiating and inserting, and the other one is receiving, right? Same pattern, but one it's completely. I mean, you think there's no connection between the two, right? One's a psychological thing, one's another. It's simply a biological structure. Like how do these have any relation to each other whatsoever, right? But nevertheless, you see this kind of weird pattern, right?
Yeah.
And then also, if you think about it, if you know the universe is mental, right? So the wave functions. Remember, Hoffman described the conscious agents in the wave function as the wave function as being derived from conscious agents.
Yeah.
And actually, what he did is then he derived the quantum probability was basically due to the free will of the conscious agents, right?
So it's
very fascinating. It actually is identical with the free will. The quantum probability and the free will are identical, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So that means all these forces and fields would be run like they're you know, you think of as like a mechanical force of like a, you know, say a magnetic field. You got a magnet, you know, attached to the refrigerator or something, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's not anything conscious running that. That's you know, just a field, right?
Yeah.
It's a mechanical effect. But then you think about it, it's all conscious agents, right?
Yeah.
In the
Well, you go on.
sorry, yeah. It's conscious agents inside of the wave functions of the field that are producing this, right?
Yeah.
And so because of that, all the dynamics, all the ways those wave functions generate their probabilities, which in turn generate where the locations of the particles are, which are, you know, that's, you know, forces are described by particle locations, right? You know, velocities, acceleration, all that is described by particle locations. So the quantum probabilities are determining where the particle is going to show up. It's determining the forces, which are in turn determined by the conscious agents, which in turn are, you know, acting on value sets. Now, it doesn't mean, of course, these are like, you know, things you can go talk to in the wave function. That would be ridiculous, but they would have some very, you know, primitive kind of proto-consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Very, you know, very elementary. It's like a, you know, a desire to go towards something rather than away from something. It's just completely primitive, but it's there, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the curious thing about that is that would mean that everything that you think you see in nature that has is just inanimate matter, especially at its root in all of its behaviors, are governed by conscious agents doing things they want to do.
Okay.
A little bit spooky, right? And it's in a way that's completely mathematically rigorous. I mean, you can recover the whole kind of mechanistic picture of nature from that. You derive the conscious agents doing what they want to do in the wave function. You derive the wave function.
Well, doing what they want to do, isn't that's just free will, right? I mean.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But based on their own desires and so on, right?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well. Yeah. I mean, I guess.
And so then that in turn generates what the fields do and so on. And you see the same pattern again, and then likewise, you know, if that, you know, if things are anything that is created because it's desired to be created, right? like
Yeah.
generated from the virtual reality in the larger consciousness system,
Yeah.
it's necessarily going to that means that necessarily this pattern of loving and being loved, or desiring, valuing and being valued, would repeat at all scales in nature.
Because it happens at the top level. Right?
Any individuated element would have to be individuated by something that valued it,
Yeah. Okay.
which is kind of spooky if you think about it, right?
Yeah. I mean.
There's the vacuum, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. When I mentioned the power plug analogy before.
Yeah.
Okay, well, outside of sex, let's look at fundamental physics. You've got a vacuum field, okay, vacuum potential. You pump an electron out of it, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And the hole that remains is a positron, okay?
Yeah. Positive. Okay. Go on.
Well, so you got the particle and the hole there, and they actually refer to it as Dirac referred to them as holes, believe it or not. And it fits the power plug analogy again. Isn't that funny? One's an electron, the other one's an electron hole.
Wait.
Yeah. What?
That can't be coincidence.
No, it's not.
What?
The two combine, okay, and the two charges, positive and negative, right?
Yeah.
You combine, they cancel out to zero, they annihilate, and there you go.
Okay.
That's like typology, and that's fantastic.
Yeah, but this can't be coincidence. Like, how could people? You get the same pattern, like not just in everything.
But in nature, it's in nature as well. Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Oh my god.
Yeah, and then you look at like plant stuff. They have the pollen stem, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it kind of inserts and gives off stuff, which is giving, and then it picks up and receives again, and you have the.
So, you're telling me.
Another thing. Outside of this is just in gender. Outside of like male-female relations.
Yeah.
Men tend, and I don't want to, because people say this is sexist, etc., but men tend to be more interested in kind of like external world jobs more, They want to go out and do stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like in the world type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes women do too. I mean, it's not like a perfect, breakdown, right?
Yeah.
It's just that they're interested in different things based on their psychology.
Yeah.
And you see kind of like basis for gender roles there. Not to say that gender roles are absolute, just that there are biological tendencies built into people's psychology that will do that.
I don't know. I mean, gender roles I think they're kind of socially, because I think they're kind of.
Well, where does sociology come from, though?
No, but I'm talking about gender roles, not gender itself. Just.
I know, but gender roles themselves are based on psychology.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Which is based on this larger pattern again.
Yeah. Okay.
So there it goes, repeating again.
I mean, they're trying to change that, but I don't think. We'll see what happens. But I mean, society has kind of like reversed the two for some odd reason because they don't want.
Well, that's because they're not aware. I mean, like they're kind of blind, materialistic. They don't understand there's a basis for all. They can't remember the notion that nature is not teleological, right? Which nature not being teleological is just ridiculous when you understand that psychology is real, right? Or idealism is real. There's a mind behind everything, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. So you're telling me that whoever the hell I'm gonna marry, we were connected at one point and we just broke off.
Or the consciousness that generates, whoever you're supposed to be with or whatever would be, if God created it like that. I mean,
but
everyone gets married, obviously. And
I know, but are you telling me that I'm predetermined to marry?
No, you wouldn't have to be. I mean, it's stuff can be misaligned in the fallen state and so on, and it's not like that. Just this is talking about its order of individuation and then likewise level of complementarity. The pieces kind of fit together, right?
Yeah.
Another example: men are thinking, right? And then whereas women tend to be more intuitive,
Yeah.
and men are often not intuitive. Like there was a guy that told me about this one time with his wife was, he was about to make a deal with someone, right?
Hmm.
And it just rationally seemed like this was normal. And the wife was like, "Something's wrong about him. I don't know what, but she could intuit something was wrong with him, right?"
Yeah.
And you didn't know what. It turned out the guy was trying to like scam him or something.
Oh.
And so, well, she had the intuitive half, and he had the thinking half.
Um,
And of course, you can reason the intuition, but you can also get the intuition directly.
yeah. Um,
It's very much like a syntax semantics kind of arrangement. You can calculate what you're supposed to get with the syntax, right?
yeah.
But if you understand the semantics the syntax is corresponding to, you can kind of like just see directly what it means, right?
Yeah.
And that fits another example of the pattern, because you have syntax, which is the kind of the outline, and the semantics is what is stamped out of the outline.
Okay, so let's go back. So obviously we have minds, and then our minds are simulating our bodies, which
Not our mind; it's other conscious agents in hyperspace.
no. What I'm saying is how that we get maleness or femaleness is through whatever your mind is. It simulates your body essentially, right? Is that? I mean,
Yeah.
okay, but then okay. So you're telling me that there's another half of me, a female, obviously, that's out there that like I'm
It wouldn't
supposed to.
have to be. I mean, that could be, say someone is made to be single or something. That could be, something in, it could be something in God's mind too, or like it could be like the female element that is, needed could be, supplied by God directly.
Okay. Okay, good. So I'm not predetermined to marry any specific person, right? Right, Johannan?
Yeah, no,
Okay, okay. It's like I was getting worried.
no, you're not. You're not. It
Okay,
doesn't work that way.
but I mean, it would obviously have to fit.
But the very fact though that people are stamped out in this, this order of stamping out happens in the same kind of way,
Yeah.
means that even if say you're not like a perfect fit, there are a lot of people who are pretty good fits because the general complementarity pattern there,
Okay.
and so to some degree it's interchangeable. And, obviously people, men and women fight all the time in marriage, so it's not perfectly that way, but the point is that it's generally such that it's complementary.
Okay. That makes sense. Tim, Eric, you got anything to add to this?
Um. So. Hmm.
There's more to the model. I mean, I give you the framework right now, right?
Yeah.
But then putting now I have all the
So how
pieces. Go ahead.
So you're saying that? Would you say that in terms of psychology, there's a correlation between different personality types then, as well between like the male and the female?
There might be. Yeah. Personally, they'd be complementary to each other.
Yeah. So you're just saying that it's because obviously you didn't say that you said that there weren't like identical matches, but there are like a general subset of people maybe that would be right for you. Like
Yeah.
that's sort of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
okay. So I'm sort of
Oh,
looking at it like there's like a pool of like sort of a
yeah.
general
Exactly.
set of.
So it's not like you're predetermined to marry this one person, but rather it's more like you're predetermined to meet a specific group of individuals.
Yeah, which people generally do anyway because they're not attracted to everyone.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Okay, that makes sense, I guess. And then now I know you had like after you did that episode on your after you did your marriage presentation, you had like this attack.
I don't want to talk about that.
Okay, we'll talk about it off air. But yeah, I
Not
mean,
even certain.
this is gonna cause a lot of problems.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just watched a video recently, and it was about this case. They're charging like $125,000 because these bakers refuse to bake.
Yeah, those
Gate
people
cake.
need to be like someone has to go in there and like break their toes essentially. Not the bakers. I'm talking about the jerks who
Yeah.
gave the suit as well as the judges.
Break their toes.
You get iron boots and just like step their toes in.
Well, it is Oregon. That is a liberal state. So.
Oregon, yeah, is pretty liberal.
Jeez.
I mean, this is gonna cause so.
So what's
like,
going? I guess I have a question.
All right.
So like, what is it exactly? So I understand the thing about the what's wrong with the like most transgender with their ego conscious and stuff, but like what's wrong with the average gay couple?
Well, that would be similar to the transgender problem, but it just a less severe version of it. So instead of so let's look at the transgender thing, okay? So you got the they say they got a male biological sex but like a female consciousness, right? Or vice versa. Female body
Right.
with a male consciousness, etc. So they call that sex and gender, right? But the catch is we just pointed out here that
Right, because
idealism is true. The whole body is being generated by male or female, right? By consciousness itself. So you can't dissociate sex and gender because it's all
the same thing, right? Yeah.
Gender is if gender is to sex, or rather, gender is to biology to psychology what sex is to gender. Sex. Darn it. I'm a little tired. I was driving a long time last night too, so I'm kind of. Gender is to psychology as sex is to biology, right?
Yeah, that's what they say.
But the point is if biology, as well as every other material object in the world, is generated by wave functions, which are generated by consciousness, according to conscious realism, then that whole biology, psychology, and the rest of the world, for that matter, the whole dichotomy breaks down, right?
Yeah.
So it's all just consciousness, right? So there is an actual pattern of consciousness generating that material object, aka the physical body, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or what Hoffman referred to as like that the symbol, like the the interface symbol, right? The body is just the interface symbol or the icon on the desktop, and there's a program behind the icon on the desktop, a consciousness program. So there will be a consciousness program behind a male or female body, okay? And based on that gender pattern that I pointed out before, right? How it's the same thing shows up over and over again, and it derives metaphysically on how this would necessarily have to be created and what value sets would have to generate it, right? Because of that, because of that, all the consciousness generating everything in the world would have to have a kind of male or female, gender to it, right?
Yes.
In the psychological sense of the word, right? So because of that, you have a actual gender there of a male or female gendered consciousness generating the body, okay, for the person.
Uh-huh.
And likewise, you would then within them they'd have their own conscious mind itself, right?
Yeah.
And they would be, if it's out of alignment, it would be, the female in the male and the male in the female, rather than being a male consciousness in a male body and a female consciousness in the female body, right?
Correct.
The pieces don't fit together in the one body, okay?
Spark plug does not meet wall.
Yeah, well, in that case, it's actually you chopped out in the transgender case. It's more like you chopped a piece of the spark plug out, and you chopped a piece of the outlet out, and you stuck them together like it's not even it's a sparklet, or an out plug or something,
Yeah.
It's not even. It doesn't even fit. Like there's there's pieces of hole and a socket and plug in the same right system.
Yeah.
So it needs to undistort that, and then so you have like remember the whole fallen state, the fractured state is essentially these puzzle pieces. This is about arranging the puzzle pieces correctly. Okay. So the puzzle pieces are arranged in this fashion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, then you have that explains the transgender thing is wrong, right? But now let's look at the gay example. Okay, now the gay is not nearly as distorted as a transgender thing, but it is still distorted in the same kind of way. You might say it a kind of a micro transgender version. Okay, so instead of like the whole consciousness being distorted, it's just the sex drive.
Oh.
Just the sex drive is flipped essentially.
So
So it's desiring a male as a partner rather than a female, or a female as a partner rather than a male. And it's only that part rather than the whole psychology being flipped in the with the biology.
Right. So what do you think of like the studies that show that the female is more likely to switch to like the bisexual side?
I don't know. That is interesting. One thing I will note though, and it was kind of interesting because William Lane Craig made a comment about, he was interviewed about gay marriage and he was talking about this, but he didn't, he said he didn't know what this was, why this was the case, that there was, he said there was, due to like the spiritual distortion with homosexuality, they tend to be very promiscuous, right? And he didn't know why. He knew it was distorted, but he didn't know what it was. He said it was kind of like a spiritual mystery. Well, that's not a mystery at all. Okay, if you have the whole notion of gender complementarity, right? The cookie fits in the dough because that's how they were stamped out.
Yeah.
Well, notice, and the promiscuity rates among homosexuals is extremely high. And even when they had gay marriage, a lot of some people are getting gay married, right? And if they're monogamous, not that their orientation is good, but good that they're monogamous anyway. But a lot of them are not. There's a very small percentage of them are actually getting married. Like they have these European countries where they legalize gay marriage, and most of the gay people are not taking advantage of it. They don't want to get married. Like it's weird.
Yeah.
Like a small sliver of them are.
Like the number of people who actually were pushing for that within the gay community, it was just like the vocal minority because most of it didn't
and
like
then other
them.
people were saying that they actually wanted to use it to destroy marriage and so on.
Right.
Anyway, then they had what was it? Okay, so you notice how gays tend to be there's a very high promiscuity rate, right?
Uh-huh.
Now, AIDS, for example, is a sexually transmitted disease, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if it's sexually transmitted, you should see it equally in straights. And I mean, it does, just being gay doesn't mean you're going to be unique to getting AIDS. Straight people get AIDS all the time, right? By having straight sex, right?
Yeah.
So why is it that you see that there was this AIDS epidemic with gays and not straights? Even though straights get it too. Well, what was up with that?
Because of all the promiscuity.
They're highly promiscuous.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, and I know that's not like a popular thing because that's not politically correct, but
screw that. We want to actually don't make that very. We want to make being politically incorrect very popular.
Yeah.
We want to step on toes and yeah, exactly. Kick toes in actually with iron boats. I saw this funny show of Judge Advocate General, and there was this guy who was doing something that seemed to be illegal, but at the end of the show, it turned out it wasn't illegal at all. He was actually hired as a consultant to do things to show if there was like to show errors in the security breaches. And he hijacked us up and did all kinds of crazy things that you would think was illegal. And then it was turned out at the very end, the general was furious at him, right? And then he said, "Remember, you were the one who hired me to search for security breaches." And he said, "Yeah, you don't step on toes. You kick toes in with iron boots. You crush toes with iron boots." And it would turn out everything he did was legal. It was all part of like a attempt to, like to demonstrate security failures as a consulting
yeah.
job. He was acting as a consultant, and they had no idea he was acting as a consultant this whole time. And the whole thing was a game to demonstrate how bad the security was.
That's
and
pretty funny.
He basically enraged the general who was going to like have his
Right.
head on a platter, and he's like, "All right, I'm paying you, but I never want to see you again."
Sounds like quality television.
Yeah, it was hilarious at the end of the episode. Anyway, okay, so yeah, that's the goal here. Reminding me of that episode of that show. Anyway, yeah, so gays are statistically highly promiscuous, and because of that, they statistically have high problems with sexually transmitted diseases like AIDS and so on. Not all of them, and if they're monogamous, more power to them. Not that being gay is good, but it's better that that's the case, right? They're monogamous than not. But the point was that because of that, it generates that problem, right? With you then have high STD rates because there's high promiscuity. But now, what would be the basis for such high promiscuity? Why are straights not as promiscuous?
Because I mean, most of them get married.
Okay, but why would gays get married?
Because of the gender
complementarianism. The pieces don't fit, so they're constantly looking for more pieces because the last piece didn't quite fit.
Yeah, because they weren't clicking the way they were supposed to.
They weren't clicking the way they were supposed to. Exactly. That explains the promiscuity because the pieces were not complementary.
They're looking for something that they can't find.
Exactly. And so notice how this thing fits. Like, it explains the gender complementarity on multiple levels, but it also explains the same pattern, other things of where things are not complementary. The puzzle pieces don't fit. And so they're looking for something they can't find, essentially, as they keep repeating over and over. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the same pattern over again. Another instance of the pattern, applied in a different fashion.
Right, but that's very interesting.
Yep.
Okay, we have some comments in the video, so
and of course there's like straight promiscuity as well, which is also bad, and that's based on people deciding not to fully complete.
Right, and there's just an element of I guess natural.
Yeah, when they do that, that also spreads. It causes stuff like abortions and sexually transmitted diseases in itself, and so on. And that that's because it's not how the system was designed. It was designed to be complementary.
So Alberto's asking, why should I value truth? Well, it's true. So why would you not?
How does that pertain to the system that we're talking about, though? I'm not certain how that pertains.
Know.
Maybe he'll clarify or something.
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous.
Maybe he's on the wrong video.
Yeah, so that's the basis for this. Now, what's interesting with this is there are two other phenomena associated. So we explained what the basis for the marriage thing. It's about fixing the programs up, right? The bodies are not just physical bodies or material objects. There's actually a consciousness program behind it, right? It's a desktop icon, as Donald Hoffman would say, right? And behind it, there's a consciousness pattern, which has a male or a female gender to it.
Yeah, I know.
Which you then have, the pieces fit or they don't fit. And so that's why it's okay. So that's the basis for that whole thing. And then, of course, if you're not, if you're straight and being promiscuous or adulterous or etc., you're also breaking the pattern, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's also bad because it's not fitting. It's not basically you're intending to not fit into the complementary pattern that I think we've pretty reasonably established here.
Well, here's the thing. I think we need to make it clear to the audience that we're not really, let's just say we're not like promoting any specific meta-ethical viewpoint. It's that it doesn't matter what meta-ethical.
It derives from metaphysics.
Yeah, I know that's the thing. Yeah, so it doesn't matter.
You can then trace the value into the metaphysics.
Yeah.
So if we have this metaphysics and we simply put value in it as a category, regardless of what we say about the value, this comes out as a consequence.
Yeah.
Right, and this isn't an attack on the person in any way. This is ultimately for the good of people.
Well, I think what we need to do, like, to get this kind of out there, because this is going to cause a lot of problems. I think what we need to do is just treat if someone thinks if a boy thinks that he's a girl, then just treat it like mental illness. I mean, I don't. I mean, that's the best we can do.
Oh, now that's pressing the real hot buttons among.
Yeah, but I mean, we got to do it.
Actually, there's something else that can press more hot buttons with this. Actually, and this is another two peripheral issues that are related to this topic. They're not related directly to. I mean, it is related in a direct kind of way, but it's not the issue itself. It's like a peripheral issue, or two of them actually. Firstly, there is the social justice warrior thing, right?
Yeah.
Where people they use all these labels. You even see it with feminism, where like that's not even a sexual thing, but it is related to gender, right? And you see them using all these labels as well, like sex. The atheists having this huge problem now. It's kind of funny seeing the atheists actually hating on feminism the way that like it's like I didn't see this coming. Anyway, so atheists are all hating on the feminism. That would be one example. They use like sexist and misogynist, like even when it's like stupid stuff, like doesn't even fit the category.
Yeah.
But then with the whole gay thing, you see like people using the bigot label, homophobe, transphobe, like just constantly.
They're just making shit up, basically.
Yeah, it's just throwing labels around and so on. It's like ad hominem attacks. Anyway, the thing with that is that your consciousness is in the shared inner space, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because your consciousness is in the shared inner space, you have the teleological values of being in the shared inner space, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, what's interesting about that is having those teleological values. If something runs against that, because the teleology of that you're able to sense in your own consciousness, like it kind of like guides your values to some extent, also derives from the larger consciousness system in the shared inner space. You're just not aware of the shared inner space because you kind of have these kind of materialistic blinders onto the world, right?
Yeah.
You can't see how the world works, but you nevertheless have this sense that there's something there that's kind of wrong or something, right? Or right, or something that should be that way.
Something that, yeah, I mean...
If you notice, though, SJWs don't seem to have that, do they?
No.
Now, there is a psychologist a very famous psychologist, actually, John Ray from University of British Columbia, and he did a study on subclinical psychopathy, okay?
That's a weird name, but okay.
This is getting good.
It's not like complete psychopathy, but just subclinical psychopathy.
Yeah, okay.
What's very interesting is that the way this was described, when you look at the psychopath traits, they call it the dark tetrad and so on, you see a lot of these same traits showing up in social justice warriors.
Yeah.
Not full-blown psychopathy, but just like high-functioning psychopathy where they're not committing crimes, but they are, it's like a subclinical level of psychopathy. It's not fully diagnosed as such, but it's there, at a lower level. And you see this all the time with the same sort of, there's there's a lot of anger motivating them always. Let's see, persistent lying. Like I've seen Essence of Thought lying a whole lot. Like not lying directly, but twisting stuff, right? He's a good example. Sexual promiscuity is high among psychopaths. And you see this with all those same people that are using those labels, sexist, misogynist, bigot, homophobe, transphobe, etc. They have the same kind of behaviors you expect out of what John Ray is pointing out as subclinical psychopathy.
Mm-hmm.
And what you notice why this is if they're not able to tell, those same people, though, are not able to sense that there's something kind of wrong with this, right?
Yeah.
They're just seeing this as all perfectly normal. This is how all these all these identities are equal and so on, and etc.
And nothing is like they just don't seem to get it.
Exactly. They don't seem to get it. Well,
Yeah.
notice something about that, a parallel between that. What is psychopathy for a second?
A disease of the mind, like the
What kind of disease, though? What does it affect?
your capacity.
Your consciousness.
Not
Right.
your consciousness, your conscience,
Oh yeah.
your moral compass, essentially, right?
Yeah.
They're
Right, it's
unable
like a
to
value
sense.
kind of thing.
Yeah, it's almost like a value in the same way that like being blind to like vision would make you blind to sight, right? You see, you're blind or something you can't see, and you're deaf, you can't hear. Well, this would be like equivalent to being deaf, morally deaf, or morally blind, right? But it's a psychological effect because it's morality is internal rather than like a sensory field or something. So you have this deafness to it, right? That is how psychopathy is defined, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is a sort of like deftoneness to morality, right?
Yeah.
Well, notice they're also deftone to the teleology behind sex,
Oh.
right?
Oh yeah.
Well, it's the same deftone. Well, no. Notice where the understanding of sexual telos comes from, right? It's from the shared inner space, right?
Yeah.
Now we're blind to larger shared inner space because we can't see. It looks like a material real world, even though it's a projection. These are icons being generated from consciousness programs behind space-time, right?
Yeah.
Material objects are like desktop icons, essentially.
Yeah.
But they're so we don't have that, but we are able to at least have a kind of a teleological sense of what's behind this, right? Like you do studies, most kids, for example, when they're born, they think that everything has a teleology behind it, right?
Yeah.
That's an example. Like everything exists for a purpose of some sort. That's a natural sensation of that teleology that exists because the universe is a program on consciousness, essentially. Okay.
Well, I mean, programs do have a purpose.
They do have purposes, right?
Yeah.
Well, if it's just material objects, you wouldn't think of them as having purposes, would you?
Yeah, but when you
But-
yeah.
So, but the thing is that because our consciousness comes from the shared inner space, we have kind of this awareness of this at an intuitive level, even if it's not determined. We don't know why it's there yet, right?
Yeah.
Now, understanding that the universe is a conscious realism that will derive the wave function from conscious agents, we can now see that it is because there is all these conscious programs behind things, right?
Yeah.
And therefore there is a telos behind everything. But at face value, until you realize that, you would understand it. But there is nevertheless this interesting phenomenon of the kids understanding everything has a teleology behind it, right? Well, so the notion of a sexual telos or a gender telos, for that matter, say with feminism, comes from the shared inner space, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So because it's coming from the shared inner space, now what else comes from the shared inner space, though?
Minds, obviously.
Minds. And what do minds contain?
Ideas.
And among those ideas, what is one subset of those ideas, say, pertaining to the topic of ethics?
Morality.
Values, right?
Okay. Nice that we're going now.
Okay, so suppose someone is blind to values, aka a psychopath.
Oh, it's not good. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, they're blind to the shared inner space. Therefore, they're also, there's a chance that they would be blind to the notion of there being a sexual telos, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're blind to the value. Both of them are in a sense teleological. Morality is in a sense teleological as well, right?
Yeah.
Everything has a purpose or an end, right? So they're blind to the moral sense, and therefore they're also going to be blind. But that's a subset of they're blind to the notion of teleology, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because of it, they will be blind to the sexual sense and the moral sense together, because it's both based on telos, the gender sense. So it's very fascinating about this is when you see someone that is like a social justice warrior using all these ifs and phobe labels, right? There is a very high probability that person is a subclinical psychopath. It's very important to note this when people bring this up, like point out that the person that's doing this is probably is using these politically correct terms. Like if
Right,
you're,
because you can't when you can't rationally discuss this with them, that would be a good explanation for why you can't rationally discuss this with them.
oh
because
yeah, that's the other thing is that psychopaths, they're dishonest and they don't which is the one example of the intellectual dishonesty. They don't want to talk about it. They're just gonna shut the whole system down.
Yeah.
So yeah, they are essentially, when you see that, it's very important to identify those people as very likely to be a very good beware of them essentially as being potentially subclinical psychopaths.
Right.
Social
So
justice warriors
would you
are.
say that this is a willful suppression, or is this
It could be a combination.
something that?
It could be a combination. I mean,
Okay.
it could be subclinical sociopathy as well. Sociopathy is learned, psychopathy is genetic. And it could be, I'm guessing to a large degree it's learned, like it could be willful because it's the large percentage of the population is not going to be psychopaths, obviously. So I'm guessing a large bunch of them are suppressing it.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm already thinking back at Donald Trump, like the night after he got elected. They announced he got elected, and people were just freaking.
Oh, that was glorious.
Imagine that with this stuff. Idealism, like, oh my god, this is gonna cause.
Wait, you
so
mean that combined with this?
Yeah, this is gonna cause so much. Oh my god.
Psychopaths do not like being called psychopaths.
Yeah,
but it's very, and the same thing with these people that are saying that we should force people to bake cakes against their will and so on, right?
Yeah. Wait, hold on.
Those people are probably psychopaths as well, to be honest.
Well, do you think? Okay, this is from the comments. So you would agree that there are lesser minds, like you have animals, fish, bugs having minds, so to speak, right? Johannan, you would agree with that? Okay, but is this ranking or continuum? So they have discrete levels, right? Could this be used to justify racism in some sense?
No, because races tend to be like, if you look at the human genome, well, firstly, just because they're different doesn't mean they're, inferior or superior, okay?
So
there can be different minds as well. So that doesn't, so even if there's something different, like say we saw aliens or something the next day, right? We contacted aliens, they have some radically different fit, they have like antenna coming out of their head, right?
Yeah.
They're way different than us, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they're necessary. I mean, they may be technologically superior, but that might just because they're like older or something, right? Yeah. But the point is, it doesn't mean they were any better or worse than us. They're just different.
What happens if, let's say if there was an alien that had more consciousness than us and that had greater mind? You could. I mean, that is possible to have a superior intelligence like that. Yeah. A superior.
You could imagine that, and you see that in like science fiction.
Could that be used to justify racism?
I don't think so. I mean, there are some differences in races and so on, and you kind of when those come up, those become relevant to topics of race and so on.
Yeah.
But by and large, they're close enough that that whole issue shouldn't even matter. There are some behavioral differences. Mostly, it's simply cosmetic.
Yeah, but I mean, here's the thing I want to know is that the definition of racism is that you think your race is superior. Now, in this case, it's not race that's superior. It's the mind or consciousness that would be, certain consciousness would be more superior than other consciousness.
I mean, it's possible.
But
I mean, you could have superior aliens out there or something, right?
Yeah.
But with regards to human beings having different races, I mean, they're so similar that even if such a thing were possible, it wouldn't even be an issue here simply because we're all even in the same subspecies, Homo sapiens sapiens,
Yeah. And I should also, and not only that, but I don't want to ruin everything. But so IP showed me his. Tim already knows. I'll tell him what I told you. Okay, is that okay?
Okay, yeah, not specific, very, very general.
So, IP, I might have told you this, Johannan, but IP showed me his script for a future video that he's gonna do on the biological argument. And
Oh, I remember that.
yeah, I'm not gonna tell you it. Okay, I promised him that I wouldn't tell anybody. But what I so with the what was I gonna? I forgot what I was gonna say.
You're talking about the racism and the.
I know, but the racism.
Oh.
I forgot. Never mind. I forgot what I was gonna say.
Oh, the platonic forms behind the genetics.
Not that. I forgot. Sorry. Oh no. Okay, now I remember. Okay, so so there's been a lot of research done in like astrobiology and stuff like that, and what aliens would look like.
Yep.
And it turns out that if aliens existed, they would be very similar. Like if there was if there were actually intelligent beings,
They would probably have.
No. They would look like they would be very similar to humans.
Yeah, I would believe that. I mean, they may have a different, like, phylogen. And they would have to have very likely different phylogenetic derivation. But I mean, we see that already with convergence on Earth. Like ichthyosaurs, sharks, and dolphins all look similar, even though one's a fish, one's a reptile, one's a mammal.
That's all I'm going to tell you, because it's in the script. So I kind of remembered, but that's all I'm going to. That doesn't get into the whole argument.
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, that would make sense. I would expect to see, like, if there were aliens, they would be generally humanoid. You might see, bear humanoids, you might see reptilian humanoids, you might see avian humanoids, etc. But they would all have the same.
The whole basic. Okay,
form,
the whole basic idea essentially is that intelligence requires intelligent life would necessarily require a human form, like human DNA.
Yeah, for that video, give him a picture of. There's a really cool thought experiment done by a guy. I forget the guy's name, but he was suggesting what would have happened had the Yucatan impact that caused the Cretaceous extinction not happened.
Yeah.
What would have happened to the Troodons, right? With Troodons were the smartest dinosaurs at the time, right? Yeah. And this really cool thing of this dinosauroid human, like it was like a man, but like a dinosauroid man.
Yeah.
You got to show him that. It would be a cool thing to add to the video as like a.
Maybe you can send me a link in the not in this, but
hypothetical alien. You could
send me the link on Facebook.
Yeah.
Private message, and then I'll send it to him.
So it wouldn't be exactly like a human, but it would be the same general form. You'd have the opposable thumb. You'd have the bipedal stance, etc. Yeah, you'd have the same general humanoid form.
But what's weird is that like they can predict if this whole structuralism thing is true, they could literally predict what certain species would look like on different planets, even though we haven't, even though we're not there.
There could be some forms that are not like there could be a possibility of some forms that have not. It could be a little more diverse than what we see.
Yeah.
What would they?
Like for example, there is one long-necked animal that we see on Earth today, right?
Yeah.
The giraffe.
Yep.
And there is some similarity to sauropod dinosaurs, but there is a lot of differences with sauropod dinosaurs. The sauropods have a very different form, right?
Yeah.
Other dinosaurs, like the Triceratops, you see the rhinos and the chameleons have a similar form there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the rhinos even have the head plate. It's just kind of like tucked into the skin, it's smaller, but it's there. You see, the forehead, the rhino kind of goes up. It's like abnormally big. So it's the same pattern there. So some cases you do see that, other cases you don't see that, and there are some forms in dinosaurs that are not present today in any animals. So it is possible, that being the case, some form patterns not used. It's possible to have some phylogenetic patterns in other planets that are different, but I would expect them to a lot of overlap as well.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you'd have the same homologous structures there.
Well, probably not the same exact, but you would have something very similar.
Like in the way that a dolphin and ichthyosaur are similar.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Okay, so
obviously they'd be different branches entirely, but they would be the same insofar as like the general form, even if one is a completely different class, a different phylogenetic tree.
So
form is a good word to use there.
Yeah.
All right, so we kind of gone off topic. So is there anything to add to this marriage model? I mean, we've already explained how like this is going to cause the
Yeah, okay, so SJWs are using the same model. We can actually explain, you know, the pattern that John Ray has identified and use it to expand and identify that, you know, SJWs are not just that they are psychopaths, but why they are psychopaths, like what the basis for subclinical psychopaths.
Yeah.
And the basis for why this is the way it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's going to be kind of interesting development to see socially. Like, not just, you know, restoring kind of like traditional morals around sex, but also helping to identify SJWs as psychopaths would be a very interesting social development that became popular.
This is going to like literally like, this is going to reverse that Supreme Court decision on
eventually, or at least, you know, produce some equivalent structure that's going to normalize marriage in some other way, you know.
Because right now, I mean, another thing that's really kind of emerging from all this is sex robots.
Oh, that's just plain stupid.
Oh my god. What losers would... Oh. Losers, that's all I can say.
Yeah. Ridiculous. But just imagine people are going to start marrying their sex robot and then they're going to have to... Whatever. It's going to...
You're marrying their sexual... That would be ridiculous.
Yeah.
Okay, so now what's interesting, though, is... remember The Amazing Atheist?
Yeah.
It was totally awesome. Essence of Thought made some, you know, typical, like, transgender garbage video.
Yeah.
And The Amazing Atheist responded to it, okay?
Wow, okay.
And The Amazing Atheist did not have kind words to say about it.
Yeah.
Neither did his huge flood of fans. So I go to Essence of Thought's video, and it's like thumb down, like 3/4 thumb down, okay?
Yeah.
Like, it was hilarious to see this happen. Anyway, I was wondering, though, because, I mean, it was very clear, there was a lot of rude comments on the video coming from, like, atheists, right? About, like, this whole transgender nonsense.
Atheists versus atheists, yeah.
Yeah. And what's fascinating to see about this is, you know, from a particularly materialistic point of view, you wouldn't see anything particularly wrong with the transgender thing, right?
Yeah, but they do.
It's just a biological...
No, not if materialism is true.
No, if materialism...
Because you don't have the... Because you don't have the same sort of way to explain it on a metaphysical level.
Yeah, so metaphysically, if materialism is true, transgenderism would seem just fine, right?
Yeah.
But notice something interesting. TJ is an atheist and a materialist, right?
Well, he is.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, he can know it.
But he sees something, right?
Something's wrong with it. It's like severely distorted, right? Not like a little distorted where people can kind of like ignore it, but it's like severely... And all of his fans who were thumbing down Essence of Thought's video recognized it. Yeah. Right? And this was there's something... They couldn't put their finger on it, right? That right there is another example of the whole shared inner space thing. They had no religious, you know, they couldn't accuse religion of it because, I mean, this is, you know, TJ and his atheist friends. You know, like, how do you call the amazing atheist as a religious biases?
Yeah.
Obviously not what's going on there. Yet he's able to, he senses in the only way, and it couldn't be anything from his materialistic frame of reference because there's no way to, you know, that pattern of, like, how I explained it here does not exist on a materialistic system.
Yeah.
Or for that matter, even a dualistic system. That's just why, you know, William Lane Craig saw it as a mystery, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so it doesn't exist there, right?
Yeah. Johan, I can hear background noise like really badly.
Oh, sorry. Is it better now?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Well, the reason for that is he was able to sense something was wrong with it, very severely distorted with it in the shared inner space, right? And that it's shared, just that, you know, because you don't have access to all that, you know. But the very fact that he was sensing this, right, was coming from it was built into his psychology essentially because of how things are aligned.
Yeah.
It's built into the psychology of all of his atheist fans who are going off and thinking this was ridiculous as well.
Mm-hmm.
That was the other point I wanted to make in addition to the SJW thing. Like, so about that though, it's very important to in the process of this, reinforce attitudes like TJ's regarding this, right?
Yeah.
Because when you reinforce those attitudes, it helps to normalize this, and that will help to reduce the effect that this
Well, because I mean,
this fractured this distortion has.
transgenderism. I mean, that is like it's starting to emerge like as the as something that's normal. They're trying to like normalize.
Well, in some areas, but I mean, obviously, TJ doesn't think it's normal.
Yeah, but they're trying to. Yeah, but here's the thing: they're trying.
I know, they're trying to. That's their political activists. So what I'm saying is, it should be normalized to actually be disgusted by that.
Yeah.
Or be disgusted by one guy suggested this thing about gay sex, right? Show how to describe that to make people disgusted about that. So when you bring out that sense of disgust and help kind of encourage people to have that kind of sentiment. Not to be against the people that have these orientations, mind you, just against the distortion itself, right?
Yeah.
Have a sense of disgust about that. What it does then is it helps to maintain the correct norm so that the distortion doesn't increase.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It helps to heighten awareness of the internal teleology, which in turn would keep people away from SJW kind of sociopathy.
Yeah.
So that would, in a sense, be kind of a cure to the sociopathy you see among SJWs, is to normalize people feeling disgusted by it and encourage those feelings of disgust among the populace.
Yeah. So because those atheists, I mean, they would be at a lower level, but because they could see the problem with transgenderism. I mean, obviously the Christians would too, but I mean, the fact that atheists can as well. I mean. And even they're like at a higher level than, let's just say better consciousness than the social justice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, social justice warriors are pretty much at the bottom of the barrel when it comes to that.
I mean, when this thing comes out, I mean, how do you treat something like that? Just say, oh, this person has ego consciousness,
and they're prone to sociopathy, so you should be aware about them.
Yeah,
it would help to quarantine the problem because they identify these people as mentally ill and
I think that a lot of
potentially dangerous. I mean, you see a lot of these people, like these same activists, come out and they will become violent, like protests. So it would be a good way to help warn society about social justice warriors and so on, and help to contain the problem.
Yeah, but I think like normalizing the metaphysical problem will drive down the problem, because right now society is just enforcing their delusion.
Yeah, exactly. But normalizing the problem, or
normalizing if we can normalize the problem, I less people will fall into this. I feel.
You mean normalize the disgust for the problem?
Okay, let me.
Sorry.
Yeah, what you said, normalizing the discussion of the problem.
Yeah, you got mixed up there. Yeah. So normalize the disgust for it because and identify it as a healthy thing because it is in line with the natural telos behind these patterns, right? It should in turn be in line with the universal intersubjectivity in the shared inner space and all that. Yeah. And you normalize that so everyone understands that's a good thing to have to be, and there's something wrong with you if you're not disgusted by this. And then likewise identify, that people that are social justice warriors and are using labels like sexist, misogynist, homophobe, bigot, transphobe, etc., are very likely they're mentally ill and they're suffering from sociopathy, like a subclinical form of sociopathy.
Yeah. Do you think that so this is from the comments.
That actually help treat them. I mean, I'm not certain. Psychopathy is there are no real treatments for psychopathy, but there are treatments for sociopathy, and so it would be helpful to treating SJWs with their
gender. Okay. So this is from the comments. You said one of your videos that people with gender dysphoria have a mind-body mismatch. But how can this be fixed if they have no power to
Well,
change the
that's the
gender of
whole
their
thing
mind.
with the. This happens actually. If you notice something else about this kind of thing tends to happen in like how ancient Rome became like debauched, shall we say? Same with ancient Greece,
Yeah.
and it usually happened at the end of their respective civilizations, right?
Hmm.
Like the Romans actually had to burn down big chunks of Athens because
Yeah.
of STDs.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. When they came in, they had to burn down chunks of it because of sexually transmitted diseases. And then the Romans also had problems, later on in their time, right?
Yeah.
So, right before they collapsed. So it tends to result from kind of like a materialistic like decadence.
Yeah.
Civilization eventually collapses because of that.
Hmm.
And it's kind of like a decline into materialism of sorts, which would in turn correlate with a absence of spirituality, right? When people become more materialistic, become less
Yeah.
spiritual, right? So to become more spiritual, say, or in religious language, get closer to God, etc., it would reduce this.
Yeah. Okay. But I mean, if you can't change the gender of your mind, obviously. So
No, but it is based on. I mean, it's not really that it's gendered. That it's that a lot of the patterns are kind of like flipped upside down in it.
okay.
So it's not like it's literally female, but it's the person. It's so distorted the person thinks it's female,
Okay.
and it
But the
would
person
become
is act-
undistorted. Yeah,
So even though the person's actually male, they think they're female, and
yeah, exactly. I mean,
okay.
it's really no different than kind of like a schizoid disorder in a way, multiple personality, but in one personality
This is
just upside down. They're confused.
this is this like totally changes the way you like will argue against the whole
I know.
movement because
Mm-hmm.
people have been fighting the wrong battle trying to make the distinction between the sex and the gender when we should be attacking the idea of the gender and like of their ego conscious. Like it's just
Yeah, it's the whole very fact that they are
they're
separated.
fighting the wrong. They're climbing the wrong hill.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, this destroys their whole framework, literally.
Mm-hmm.
It's like taking.
I wonder what's going to happen when it becomes like popular to identify social justice warriors as sociopaths,
Uh,
and to encourage, a natural cis normativity and heteronormativity in regards to you know aesthetic preferences. So it's good to that there are certain normativities that are superior to others in a sense.
Wow. I just wonder. I mean,
Cis
we.
normativity and heteronormativity being superior to the others.
I mean, we're gonna literally turn the whole world into a Christian utopia, essentially.
Eventually,
Over time.
over
Eventually,
time, yeah.
it'll take time, but I mean, that's crazy.
well, yeah, I think another way to treat the psychopathy is point them towards the objective standard.
Yeah, and then this model helps to do that beforehand. The objective standard, because it's based in religion,
Uh-huh.
and religious people don't tend to know the reasons for all this stuff, right? Because it's
Yeah,
based on a dogma book, right? It's based on the cargo cult thing, right?
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, the cargo cult, it may be telling the truth. The airplanes may really exist, but they don't know how they fly. They don't know why they're there.
But we do.
But now we have the model for why all this is there.
Yeah.
So it's like explaining how we were right all along. Like
Yeah,
Yeah, but it's more. It's not like.
we are the like they. I can't remember. I think it's Penrose or somebody that has the quote where it's like we're climbing the mountain of truth, and then at the top are the theologians,
yeah.
and that like we are the theologians at the top. Like the idealists are the theologians at the
In a
top.
sense, but we're also like integrated with the physics who are coming up.
Oh,
Yeah,
right, but
in a sense,
merging
yeah,
the
yeah,
theology
exactly,
and
with
the
the science and the what was theology? It's really it's just part of reality. It's that it wasn't identified as such before, so it kind of became dogma in religion because it's the cargo cult thing.
Well, let's say that God was trying to get this out there in a way that
People
would understand. Not like all the physics.
They're kind of like
cargo cult, right? And
yeah. If you have a World War II pilot trying to explain an airplane engine to a Polynesian islander, they're going to get some of the deals, but they're not going to really understand the full work. They're going to understand some basics, but they're not going to understand the real.
But now we are the we are the people in the plane telling.
Yep, exactly.
Oh my God. Crazy. And the fact that you get like this whole, not just metaphysical, but like philosophical, like it literally covers everything, every part of philosophy. It covers metaphysics, ethics, epistemology. I mean, literally everything. Like you just have this whole picture of reality that it can literally explain everything about everything.
I can't remember. I was thinking I was thinking about this the other day. I think you said something in the group chat, Kyle, but like there's one field that I was thinking that it doesn't quite that I can't think of how it would relate to, but I'm trying to think of that
Geology?
right now.
Was it geology?
No, within philosophy.
Within philosophy.
I'm gonna look in the group chat.
I mean, this is great. Like, this is like a philosopher's dream. Like figuring out.
Yep.
It's crazy.
Now,
also,
the major objection that I've seen against then this sort of hypothesis, or this whole foundation of things, is that you're explaining too much. So like theories of everything, have a low don't really have explanatory power because they have too much.
Well, you see, the thing about the irony of all this, you know where quantum idealism came from in the first place? So one of the big motivations for it was?
You tell me, I'll probably know. But
quantum gravity.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
you know what quantum gravity is?
I see where you're going.
Quantum gravity is the theory of everything.
Theory of everything.
So
right, which is like the hypocrisy of the whole. Yeah. So, which is what they were trying to.
So of course it's theory of this is a theory of every it's built into this whole quantum idealist framework is part of a theory of everything. So no wonder it explains so much because that's what it was meant to do.
Yeah, but I mean quantum gravity. I mean,
right.
That covers the science, and then of course we have the ethics and yeah.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it is a theory of everything, and not just a theory of everything in a scientific sense, but in a philosophical sense as well.
Right. So yeah, it's a theory of everything, and that's how it is.
It's so crazy because like this is like objective. Like this isn't like written in some dogma book. That's one guy that's like, oh yeah, these are true because of this. Well, no, it's like these are physics. Like literally, you can derive this from almost any.
Yeah, I mean, conscious realism is physics, and a little bit of meta. I mean, the gender aspect is not in the conscious realism itself, but you have a little bit of derivation, and then you see like all these parallels in comparative religion and so on. It becomes very clear that this pattern has a reality to it.
This jigsaw puzzle of figuring out reality. Essentially, it's crazy,
and it fits right in. It fits right into the.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the whole notion of having multiple conscious agents merging and becoming one conscious agent and so on, or two, it fits. It's part of the pattern. The gender aspect, he's going from a scientific point of view, so he's not going to be talking about value, right?
Yeah.
But the point is, you can upgrade his model with value. And when you have value, you have this pattern of valuer, and valued. And that will necessarily correspond to if everything is conscious agents, both the valued and the valuer will be conscious agents, and then from that you can expand on that. And
then how philosophers think of ethics is this objective standpoint, like everyone
Well, I really think if
agrees.
you introduce this sort of system to meta-ethicists who are Platonists,
Mhm.
this makes that click as well.
Oh
I'm
yeah, definitely, because
quite
it's universal.
I'm
I mean,
quite
a
interested
Platonic
in it
form
now.
is by definition universal or
Egg,
subjective.
yes,
That's what makes it. It's the form that identifies all the archetypes. You know, all the I mean, the archetype that identifies all
uh-huh.
the forms. So of
Yeah,
course it has to be.
I'll probably be a moral Platonist now, David.
Yeah.
I'll send some stuff in the chat, Kyle. I think that seems to be what you like in what you've described yourself as. Like I
I'm kind of
think that that's
agnostic,
most
but I mean,
compatible with.
now that I hear about it, I think I might just hold to that because it seems. I mean, just the
Yeah,
fact that under my viewpoint that God would be the good, like the top Platonic
yeah.
form, and then so yeah, I think I'm gonna look into that just to. I'll probably just hold to that. Yeah, I guess. Because I've kind of been I've been like agnostic in this whole meta ethics thing because I've talked to
Well, I've always held just different sorts of moral realism, but
yeah, but I mean I've always been agnostic as to which one is true, and I think I'm gonna look into
grounding it in the Platonic form is gonna.
yeah I think Platonic form I think that one I'm gonna look into it more, but I might
Mhm.
just hold to that because I realize that I have to hold to something even though at the
You know,
top
I
level
think about where the value set is in the shared inner space, right? And so all these
yeah
values that's in the shared, and it converges on a single one. And think about what the contents of the shared inner space is in the first place, outside of ethics. I mean,
yeah
it's Platonic forms, it's archetypes.
that makes
I mean,
sense. I
that's
mean
why they mentioned the whole notion of the collective subconscious.
but I mean well I mean like I said I mean the reason why I've been agnostic is not because I want to not know. It's just that like I can hold the any viewpoint I want, and at the top level it's going to be more realism. So,
Yep.
but I realize that from my
But you also
level,
don't want to have like correct values, but then have them distorted, like
yeah, I know.
so that they correct values that are translated due to lack of knowledge into
I know.
a
I want to have a moral
bad.
belief
Yeah,
that can account for my level of reality.
yeah. And this does that to an extent. This
Yeah,
helps to expand on that.
yeah. Tim, send me the links in the
Yeah,
group chat. And
I'm looking at this right now. I'm just looking at the like Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy and stuff. But
I'll
the
look
thing
at it.
is, like, there's so many. There aren't many meta-ethicists who are both theists and moral Platonists. So I mean, once again, we're talking about such unexplored ground here for the most part,
Mm-hmm.
which is so it's like like starting from scratch with some of this stuff, which is
Yeah, because
exciting.
some people, yeah,
It's
it
really
is.
exciting.
You get to
Mhm.
explore stuff that was not seen before.
Right, and connecting dots that like moral Platonism and idealism, like what?
It all fits together. Yep.
Yeah, that I mean, ethics has been the one area that I haven't connected the dots to. So maybe I'm hoping that moral Platonism can be that dot that connects
Mm-hmm.
that area. So,
Right.
Even though I don't really like, I don't know about the term, but there are different. Even then, you've got different subsets of.
no, because in moral Platonism, I think it's where like the evil is like the lesser forms, and then the good is the higher
Well, the
forms.
evil in Neoplatonism is privatio boni. Like
Yeah,
Neoplatonism literally has privatio boni as its.
yeah. So that's what I'm thinking. Maybe I think moral Platonism is probably valid in this case, given the fact that you can derive, you can derive privatio boni from moral Platonism. So in a sense, so yeah.
Uh-huh.
All right. So how long? Oh, we've been going on for almost an hour.
Uh-huh.
You guys want to end the because we kind of gone off topic. Off
Yeah.
topic. Yeah. I think we've pretty much covered everything.
How many people are watching? Do you think right now? Can you tell from statistics or anything? Or
We had 5 views earlier, but they went offline.
gotcha. How long ago?
uh, about 30 minutes ago.
Gotcha.
And then just one last
Luckily,
question.
it's a recording.
One last question before we end.
Yep.
When do you plan on releasing your book or complete video? Your next video?
Right now, I actually have one. Actually, I have this one that I was thinking of releasing soon. I want to preview the rest of it first.
Yeah.
It's actually a lecture from someone else.
Oh,
Very famous name, actually, on a topic that would be very interesting. Very rare video I found.
okay.
James Gates talking about the discovery of his computer code
No, that's
and
not.
Oh yes.
how he derived it,
I've
Oh, how he
seen like
derived it?
little clips
how
from
he
it.
figured it out.
Okay.
I'm not talking about like the science panel thing where he's talking about the discovery.
Mhm.
I'm talking about the lecture where he actually goes into detail showing how he gets the computer.
Oh. So wait, when was the video made though? Like what year?
Long time ago, but
Okay,
it's
right.
like a very rare video.
Okay.
Not on YouTube, so.
That's exciting.
Yeah,
I mean,
get that on. Even though I know that argument, like that piece of evidence for idealism is kind of, I wouldn't say it's wrong, but it's like doesn't give you the full thing. But
Yeah, but it's enough that it really wets people's app. I mean, it's a very fat. I mean, it's more eye popping in some way. I mean,
and I
the whole
really
thing is
like
eye-popping.
listening to him too.
Yeah, but that thing in particular is very eye popping.
yeah, just put it on just so we can have it on YouTube.
Yeah,
Because I haven't been able to
Resource.
find. Yeah.
yeah. This is the derivation of the computer code.
Okay, that makes sense.
A little bit technical, but it's that's what you would expect. But if nothing else, you just rewatch it and like try and
Yeah.
figure it out. All right, so I guess
Alright.
that's that.
So that's
for now.
that concludes it. Yep. We'll figure out something else to talk about next time. But yeah,
Cool.
ending broadcast now.
Yep.